Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Grab a drink, sit down, and buckle up, because this isn't your typical she cheated and I walked story. This is the kind of nightmare that doesn't happen all at once. It unravels piece by piece. And the worst part? It started with a ping. Not a dramatic confrontation. Not a lipstick-stained shirt. Not some shady text I found while snooping. A ping. From a forgotten iPad. Left in our living room. It was 2:47 a.m. I remember the time because I was playing this stupid tower defense game on my phone, battling insomnia while Marvin, our dog, snored like a lawnmower next to me. The TV was on low volume, playing reruns of Storage Wars, and I was halfway through microwaving leftover meatloaf when the iPad dinged. I almost didn't check. Almost. But curiosity, that quiet little devil, dragged me off the couch. I didn't even need a password. Amber Rose, yes, her real name, always said she had nothing to hide. And up until that moment, I believed her. She was my fiancée, my best friend, my ride or die, as she used to say. And yet there it was. A message preview from an unknown number. He still thinks you're just sleeping off a hangover? You're wicked. Something in me cracked open. I tapped the message. It opened an entire thread of texts, full of things that made my blood run cold. I can't believe he paid for this trip. Don't feel bad, babe. He's just your training wheels. God, last night was. You wore his ring while moaning my name. I dropped the iPad. Literally. It hit the hardwood with a thud and woke up Marvin, who looked at me like I'd just screamed. I hadn't. I was too numb. My fiancée was on her bachelorette trip in New Orleans. Supposed to be back Sunday. It was Friday night, technically Saturday morning, and she hadn't called, hadn't messaged, hadn't even liked my last meme. Now I knew why. She wasn't just partying. She was with someone else. Someone who wasn't me. I just stood there, meatloaf forgotten, dog confused, TV still babbling about unclaimed storage units, while my world fell apart in complete silence. She didn't know I had the iPad. She didn't know I'd seen the messages. And at that moment, she didn't know I was already on my way. By sunrise, I was already driving. No toothbrush, no change of clothes, no plan. Just me, Marvin. Yes, I brought the dog. He goes where I go, and the quiet hum of my car rolling down I-65. Every few miles, I'd check her location, forgetting it was turned off, and then I'd grip the wheel tighter. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I didn't even know what I'd say if someone asked where I was going. To catch my fiancé cheating? That felt insane, like something people say in movies. And yet there I was, running on no sleep, heart pounding, stomach in knots, heading to New Orleans like some sort of sad, over-caffeinated detective. I hadn't heard from Amber Rose in 48 hours. Her friend stopped replying to my texts. Kaylee, her maid of honor, even blocked me after I asked, "Is she safe?" That's all I wanted to know at first, if she was okay. But the texts on the iPad changed that. I wasn't just worried anymore. I was unraveling. And deep down, I wasn't sure if I was trying to save her from something or expose her. When I finally pulled into the neighborhood where her Airbnb was, I felt physically sick. My palms were sweaty, my mouth was dry, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror like I was being followed. I parked a few houses away and just sat there, watching the house. It was a big modern place, all glass and marble and too clean landscaping. Definitely not a budget stay. I remembered her saying they were keeping it low-key. That was lie number one. There was no music, no cars, no signs of life. But someone was there. I walked up the path with Marvin at my side and knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Nothing. Finally, a woman appeared from the backyard. Short, dark hair. Older, maybe mid-40s, holding a garden hose. She blinked at me, then looked at Marvin. "You're not another one of them, are you?" I asked. "Sorry, are you the Airbnb host?" She nodded slowly. "Yep. And if you're here to party, you're 2 days late." They checked out early. Real early. I felt something twist in my chest. They left early? MMHM, Saturday morning. Like, before dawn. One of the girls was crying. The blonde one. She was screaming at someone on speakerphone, pacing around the driveway. Left half their stuff behind. Liquor bottles, high heels, someone's eyelash stuck to my toaster. I stared at her, stunned. "Did you hear anything they said?" The woman paused, clearly debating whether to share more. Then she looked me over, disheveled, red-eyed, gripping Marvin's leash like it was keeping me tethered to earth, and must have decided I wasn't a threat. She sighed. There was something weird going on, yeah. The bride. I think she was the bride. She looked off. Guilty. Kept checking her phone, whispering. Then, out of nowhere, they packed up and left. One of the guys who picked her up wasn't part of the group. He had a truck. Out-of-state plates. That did it. My knees nearly gave out. A guy picked her up? She nodded. Tall, dark beard, smug as hell. Called her babe, right in front of the other girls. No one said anything. Not even the crying one. She just threw her suitcase in and got in like she was running away from something. I asked if there were cameras. The woman tilted her head and gave me this look, a mix of pity and discomfort. There aren't, she said. But if you're who I think you are, maybe it's better you don't see it. Whatever happened that night, it didn't look like a mistake. It looked planned. That word, planned, echoed in my head like a bomb going off. She'd left on her own. With a guy? While wearing my ring. No robbery. No kidnapping. No emergency. She just chose someone else. And vanished. I stumbled back to my car. I couldn't feel my legs. Marvin whined, nuzzling into my side. And for a moment, I hated myself for dragging him into this. I sat in the driver's seat, numb, staring at the dash. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just pulled out the iPad again. There were more texts. New ones. He still hasn't figured it out. Poor thing probably thinks I'm at brunch. You're not going to tell him, are you? Of course not. I'll come back. Cry a little, blame Kaylee. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a script. And I wasn't the groom. I was the punchline. I didn't drive away from the Airbnb right away. I just sat there for a long time, trying to process everything. The sun was glaring through the windshield. Marvin had curled up in the back seat, and I was frozen, not because I didn't know what to do next, but because I knew exactly what I was going to do, and it terrified me. I was going to open the videos folder. Yeah, on the iPad. I hadn't looked at that yet. I guess part of me was still hoping I'd wake up and realize this was just some paranoid breakdown. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe she had a cousin in New Orleans I forgot about. Maybe the guy was just an Uber driver. Maybe the messages were a prank or taken out of context. But deep down, I already knew what I'd find. Because when someone you love breaks your trust, it doesn't come in small pieces. It shatters like glass, fast, loud, and permanent. I tapped open the Photos app and then swiped over to Videos. At first, it looked like nothing new had been added. Then I noticed one file. A 26-second clip. Dated the same night, she left me on read. 11:42 p.m. It was titled, LOL. MP4. My heart sank before I even hit play. The video was vertical, filmed from inside a moving car. Music blasted in the background, some awful party remix of a 2000s pop song. And there she was, in the passenger seat, holding a drink, her head thrown back in laughter. The camera shook a little as someone zoomed in on her face, and she looked straight into the lens and said, "This one's for Darrel. Sorry, babe, last night of freedom." The guy next to her, the driver, leaned over and kissed her cheek while flipping off the camera. He had a full-sleeve tattoo, a smug grin, and a voice that dripped with mockery. She said she'd behave, he said, laughing. But then I showed up. They both laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. And then the video cut off. I didn't realize I was crying until Marvin licked my arm. I must have been breathing so shallowly that my vision was starting to tunnel. I slammed the iPad down on the passenger seat and stared out the window. I had never felt so utterly replaceable in my entire life. The worst part wasn't even the video. It was that she thought it was funny. That she sent it to someone, maybe that guy, maybe her friends, thinking it was something to laugh about. I wasn't a person to her anymore. I was an obligation. A placeholder. A joke. I was still supposed to marry this woman in 3 weeks. That's when it hit me, the wedding. My God. We had deposits locked in. Venues booked. Guests flying in. My mom had just bought her dress. Her little cousin was practicing Flower Girl steps in their living room. And she was out here filming memes with her affair partner. I felt like a fool. A full-grown, fully committed, wildly naive fool. I knew I couldn't go back home. Not yet. I wasn't finished. I didn't just want closure anymore. I wanted the truth. All of it. Because if she was willing to throw this grenade into our lives, then I was going to at least understand the blast radius. I checked the iPad again, digging through her messages. Most of them were generic, group chats, makeup tips, emoji spam. But one thread stood out. It was from a contact named Nico. I didn't know a Nico. Their chat was extensive, over 200 messages. Most of them were flirty, casual, sprinkled with inside jokes. But as I scrolled further back, it became clear this didn't start on the trip. This had been going on for months. March, February, even December. I found a message where she sent him a selfie from our living room while I was literally in the kitchen cooking dinner. "He's making stir-fry again, lol, I swear I'm gonna die if I have to eat another carrot." There were messages about our engagement, about how she felt trapped, how she couldn't tell if it was love or just comfort. One message said, "I'll marry him if I have to, but I want you." Another said, "Worst case, I get a year of stability and then we drift apart. Win-win." That one made me physically gag. I had spent 2 years building a future with someone who was drawing escape routes in her head the whole time. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It was a plan. And I was the prop in her performance. The placeholder groom. The boring safety net she could fall back on until something more exciting showed up with tattoos and a yacht playlist. That night, I didn't get a hotel. I slept in my car with Marvin curled up against my ribs. My body ached, my brain was on fire, and my dignity was somewhere between a truck stop and the bottom of a vodka bottle. But I still wasn't done, because while I was sitting there in the dark, my phone vibrated. It was a text. From her. The first one in 3 days. And all it said was, "Hey babe, you up?" I stared at the screen for a solid 5 minutes, my thumb hovering over the reply button like it weighed 20 pounds. "Hey babe, you up?" After everything, the silence, the lies, the iPad, the video, Nico, that's what she sent me. As if I'd just been hanging out, sipping tea, waiting for her to reappear like nothing happened. My hands were shaking. Not with anger, not yet, but something worse. That hollow mix of disbelief and humiliation. The feeling of knowing someone still sees you as dumb enough to believe them, even after they lit your world on fire. I didn't answer. Not right away. I sat in the car and stared at Marvin, who was curled up in the passenger seat like none of this was happening. Lucky him. I envied that kind of peace. That ignorance. I wanted to be the version of myself from 2 weeks ago who thought this woman loved me, who thought her only secret was sneaking extra fries when we ordered takeout. But that version of me was dead now. Instead of replying, I turned the iPad back on and opened her location app, something she apparently forgot to disable on this device. There it was. A pin. She was still in New Orleans. Only now she was in a completely different part of the city, near the edge of the Garden District, in a building that looked like a luxury condo on Google Maps. I zoomed in, screenshot it, and started driving. I still had no clue what I'd say when I saw her. I just knew I had to see her face, really see it, when she realized I knew everything. I wanted to see if she'd lie again, if she'd cry, if she'd even care. It took about 20 minutes to get there, and my heart pounded the entire drive. I parked across the street and waited. It was a sleek, high-rise building, probably a rental for wealthy tourists. I watched the front doors like a hawk, trying to decide if I should walk in, ring the bell, or wait until she came out. Then I saw her. Amber Rose. Wearing a cropped hoodie, yoga pants, flip-flops, hair in a bun, the kind of outfit I used to see her wear on lazy Sundays at home. She walked out the building like nothing was wrong, sunglasses on, phone in hand. I watched her laugh at something on her screen, oblivious to the fact that her entire world was seconds away from collapsing. I didn't approach her. Not yet. Instead, I followed her at a distance. I know how that sounds. Creepy. Desperate. But I wasn't going to confront her in the street like some unhinged soap opera character. I just needed more. Proof. Context. Something solid to hold on to because even now, there was this sick part of me hoping I was wrong. That somehow, she was still the woman I loved and not the manipulative stranger who filmed a last night of freedom clip with another man. She turned into a coffee shop. Small, quiet, trendy. I parked my car and walked in a minute later, ordered an iced tea I didn't want, and sat in the corner by the window. She hadn't noticed me. She sat with her back to the door, phone still in hand, scrolling. And then, he appeared. Nico. I didn't even need to guess. He matched the video. Tall, smug, wearing a black designer jacket, like he was trying to look casual but still wanted the room to know he had money. He kissed her on the cheek like they'd been dating for years. She giggled, leaned into him, and whispered something I couldn't hear. He laughed and pulled out his phone. They started taking selfies. My stomach twisted. That was all I needed. I walked outside, sat back in my car, and opened her text again. Hey babe, you up? This time I replied, yeah, I've been up, watching you and Nico sip lattes and giggle like teenagers. I stared at the message for a moment and then hit send. The dots appeared instantly. She was typing. Darrel, where are you? Out front. Smile for the camera. I wasn't bluffing. I took a photo of them through the window and sent it. Then silence. She looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. Her face changed. I can't even describe it. Not guilt. Not shame. Just panic. Pure, cold panic. She grabbed her phone, stood up, and started toward the door, Nico trailing behind her like a confused puppy. I didn't stick around to let her speak. I put the car in gear and pulled away, watching her shrink in the rearview mirror, mouth open, frozen on the sidewalk. She wanted to talk? Not yet. She'd earned silence. And I had one more thing to do before I ever let her voice back into my ears. Because that iPad? It had a hidden folder. And I had just opened it. When I tell you I didn't breathe for a full minute after opening that folder, I mean it literally. I sat there in the front seat of my car, parked just 2 blocks from the coffee shop where I'd last seen Amber Rose's face turned to stone, and stared down at the iPad like it was a weapon. And in a way it was. It wasn't locked. Wasn't encrypted. Just hidden. Tucked inside an album titled Receipts Paperclip, which would have sounded innocent if not for the fact that every file inside it felt like someone twisting a knife into my chest, 1 digital inch at a time. It started with screenshots. Hundreds of them. Texts between her and Nico, yes, but also chats with friends, even family members. Conversations where she spun a very different story about our relationship. In one message to her cousin she wrote, he's harmless, emotionally soft, like a weighted blanket with Wi-Fi. That one stung more than I'd like to admit. Another one to Kaylee said, I could cheat on him in front of his face, and he'd probably say sorry for not being more exciting. There was a spreadsheet, too. An actual spreadsheet, titled Exit Strategy. I opened it, heart pounding, and there it was, a full timeline of our relationship, marked with color-coded notes like engagement achieved, gain full access to accounts, and then, in bold, exit before wedding, trigger emotional distance for soft landing. There was even a section labeled Plan B, if Darrel finds out. I swear to you, I sat in that car and read my own life like a PowerPoint presentation. She'd mapped it all out, planned it like a product launch. And the final folder? It was full of photos. Not the romantic kind. Not even the raunchy kind. It was all of them. Her friends, posing in lingerie, party outfits, doing shots, kissing strangers, laughing under neon lights. I didn't care about the wild behavior. What hit me was the captions. Because these weren't just private moments. They were trophies. And I was the punchline. In one clip, Amber Rose holds up a cocktail and says, to Darrel, thanks for paying for this trip, boo. You really are husband material for someone else. Laughter explodes in the background. Another one. She's sitting on a stranger's lap, whispering in his ear. The camera zooms in just as he hands her a room key. I couldn't feel my hands. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Marvin let out a low whimper from the back seat, like he could feel the air change. The betrayal wasn't just romantic anymore. It was surgical, clinical. She didn't just stop loving me. She weaponized my love. Used it. Monetized it, practically. And for what? A luxury weekend. A better Instagram reel. A thrill? But I wasn't broken. Not completely. Because right there, in that wave of devastation, a strange kind of clarity cut through the chaos. I couldn't stop the past. I couldn't erase the texts, the lies, the humiliating truth of what she'd done, but I could control the fallout. I could decide how this story ended. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront her in a coffee shop or beg her to come back. That's what she expected. That's what her plan B prepared for. She'd never see my plan coming. So I drove back home. Quietly. No announcements. No warning. I arrived at our townhouse, fed Marvin, took a hot shower that nearly burned my skin, and then sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where I once laid out save-the-date cards and made a new plan. The wedding was in 19 days. That gave me time. I canceled nothing. I told no one. I let the machine keep moving, just like she wanted. And in the background, I started quietly pulling threads. I changed my bank login, transferred our joint savings into a private account, I contacted the venue and asked if they could record the ceremony for remote family. They said yes. I asked if I could customize the welcome slides on the reception projector. They said absolutely. Every day, she texted more. Hey babe, I'm back. Let's talk? I was just drunk. I didn't mean it. It was a stupid joke. Please, you don't understand. At one point, she even sent a photo of the two of us from last Christmas with the caption, "Can we go back to this?" I didn't reply. I wanted her nervous. I wanted her guessing. The first real message I sent was 4 days before the wedding. I need you to write your vows by Thursday. I want them to be honest. She replied almost instantly. I will. I love you. I didn't even read it twice. Because I already knew. This wasn't going to be a wedding. This was going to be a funeral. Not for me, but for the version of her that thought she could play me forever. And when she walked down that aisle, smiling at her guests, pretending she was the glowing bride everyone expected, she'd have no idea what was waiting on that screen behind her. The morning of the wedding felt like the calm before a hurricane. The skies were clear, the breeze gentle, and everything looked perfect. Too perfect. My mom called to say how proud she was. Her parents texted a sweet photo of Amber Rose as a baby, writing, "Can't believe she's becoming a wife today." I smiled through it, nodded, said all the right things. No one suspected a thing, not even her. That morning, she sent me a voice memo. It was only 7 seconds, and she sounded shaky. I meant what I said. In the vows. I still love you, Darrel. I didn't play it again. I just stared at the screen until the preview faded. I had already heard her real voice. The one on the videos. The one she used when she thought I wasn't listening. No amount of sentiment could overwrite that. I arrived at the venue early. Marvin stayed with my cousin. The chapel was stunning. White rose arrangements, soft piano music, golden sunlight pouring through the arched windows. Guests trickled in, dressed in shades of pastel and navy, laughing, hugging, taking photos in front of the floral backdrop we had paid for months ago. I walked through it all like a ghost. I don't remember eating. I don't remember talking. I just remember the sharp pressure behind my ribs, like my own heart was warning me this was it, the point of no return. The tech team had the video cued exactly how I asked. I told them we were doing a surprise tribute. Something cute. A personal message for the bride and groom. They didn't question it. People love surprises at weddings. And this was going to be one they'd never forget. We didn't have a first look. Amber Rose insisted it would ruin the magic. Fine by me. I didn't want to see her until the last possible second. But what I did see was her walking into the side room just minutes before the ceremony, laughing with her bridesmaids. She was glowing, confident, in control. She still thought she'd won. At exactly 4 p.m., the ceremony music started. I stood at the altar, heart pounding like it was trying to break through my chest and run. Guests turned, smiling, as she appeared at the end of the aisle, arm looped through her father's. Her dress was stunning, sleek, satin modern. Her veil floated like mist. I could barely breathe as she walked toward me, eyes locked on mine, wearing that same smile she used to flash every time she wanted something. It was fake, all of it. But now, so was I? The ceremony was brief. A few words from the officiant. A blessing. The vows. Hers came first. She looked into my eyes and said, "I know I can be impulsive. I know I'm not perfect. But loving you has grounded me. You are my safe place, my calm, my future, and I promise to never take that for granted." Her voice trembled like it was real. Then it was my turn. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Everyone expected me to start crying, to read some heartfelt promise about forever. Instead, I looked at her and said, I was going to write something beautiful, something true, but the truth changed 3 weeks ago. So instead, I want to share a short video, something you may have forgotten. Just a little highlight reel. The crowd laughed, assuming this was part of some quirky, sentimental thing we'd planned. The screen behind us flickered on. And then silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The first clip was of her, on that boat, laughing with Nico. Then came the voiceover from her toast. To Darrel, thanks for paying for this trip, boo. Cut to her chat logs. The spreadsheet. The exit strategy file. Laughter from her friends. Nico kissing her cheek. The chat with Kaylee. He's emotionally soft, like a weighted blanket with Wi-Fi. And then finally, the worst one. The video where she said she'd marry me for stability, then drift away. Gasps echoed through the chapel. A few people whispered, Someone audibly said, "Oh my God." Her parents turned to stare at her in disbelief. Her father took a step back like he'd just watched his daughter slap herself on live TV. Amber Rose froze. Her face went white, like the blood had completely drained out of her body. She turned to me and whispered, "Darrel, what are you doing?" But it was too late. The screen faded to black. I looked at her and said, calmly, "I didn't want vows. I wanted honesty. That was yours." Then I stepped down from the altar, walked past the crowd, and straight out the front doors into the sunlight. I didn't stop to talk. I didn't run. I just walked. The doors behind me slammed shut, muffling the chaos that was already erupting inside. She called me 23 times that evening. I didn't answer. She texted paragraphs, cried, screamed through voicemails, said I ruined her life, that I embarrassed her, that no one would ever trust her again, that her brand was destroyed. But what she never said, not once, was sorry. Because people like her don't say sorry. Not unless they're losing something. And by then, she'd already lost everything. The moment I stepped out of the venue, I expected something. Maybe relief, maybe regret, maybe even some kind of euphoria. But all I felt was weight. Not anger, not pride, just the crushing silence that follows after a storm finally stops. The sun was still shining, the birds were still chirping, and for everyone else in the city, it was just another beautiful Saturday. For me, it was the first time in years that I wasn't someone's backup plan. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to smile. I didn't go back to the house we shared. I couldn't. The thought of walking into that space again, the one where she'd told me she loved me, where we danced in the kitchen to Fleetwood Mac, where I proposed with shaking hands and a speech I'd practiced for weeks, it all felt like a graveyard now. Every room was a crime scene. So instead, I drove 2 hours to my brother's place. Didn't even call ahead. Just showed up, rang the bell, and when he answered, I finally broke. No tough guy speech. No poetic monologue. Just me, knees buckling on his front steps, crying harder than I had since I was 12. He didn't ask questions. Just let me in. I slept for almost 15 hours. When I woke up, I had 47 unread messages. Some from friends. A few from Amber Rose's family. Most from unknown numbers. Apparently, the video had leaked. Someone at the wedding, probably one of her bridesmaids, had filmed it. The projection, the audio, my exit. And within hours, it was viral. Not just in our circle. I mean trending. Reddit, TikTok, even a reaction thread on Twitter. It had a name now. The most savage wedding walkout in history. People were praising me, calling me brave. Some said I set the new gold standard for public betrayals. Others offered me jobs, beers, therapy coupons. I even got a message from a divorce attorney who said, "If you ever marry again and need me, I'll represent you for free." It should have made me feel empowered, vindicated. But it didn't. Not really. Because in private, I still felt like the joke. Like I had given someone the absolute best parts of me, my loyalty, my trust, my love, and they had tossed them aside like a scratched CD. Now the world had the footage, the receipts, the scandal. But none of them knew what it felt like to lose something you thought was real while the other person laughed behind your back. Amber Rose went quiet for 3 days. Then came the apology tour. She posted a long-winded Instagram story, dressed in all beige, crying into a throw pillow. Said she was humbled, that she'd made mistakes, and that love is complicated. She blamed stress, blamed alcohol, blamed childhood trauma. But never once did she name me. Never said my name. She apologized to anyone who felt hurt, as if it was an accident, as if this hadn't been scripted, premeditated, rehearsed. Then she did the one thing that made my stomach turn more than anything else. She started monetizing it. Brand deals, interviews, a new podcast titled Rising from Ruins. She changed her bio to publicly shamed but spiritually rising and launched a Patreon. In one episode, she said, "Honestly, Darrel saved me from a life that wasn't mine." As if I had done her a favor. As if her betrayal was a form of self-discovery. That's when I lost it. Not publicly. Not with a post. But inside. Because it wasn't enough that she ruined me. Now she was selling it. Turning my pain into engagement. Making my heartbreak content. And people were eating it up. Commenting how brave she was for owning her truth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shut it all down. I wanted to tell every single one of them who she really was. But then something unexpected happened. Kaylee, her maid of honor, messaged me. The same one who ghosted me when I asked where Amber Rose was that night in New Orleans. The same one who helped plan the whole disaster. Her message was short. I'm sorry. You deserve to know the rest. She attached a folder. At first, I didn't want to open it. I was tired. Done. But something in her message, the simplicity, the guilt, pulled at me. I opened the folder. There were 3 videos. One was filmed in the Airbnb the night everything blew up. Amber Rose, drunk, surrounded by her bridesmaids, bragging about the plan like it was some twisted heist movie. She joked about marrying me for a year just to build an exit budget. Another was of Nico, talking to Kaylee, bragging about how he'd won, how he was freeing her from some desperate nerd. I paused that one halfway through. The last one was a voice recording. Amber Rose, alone, crying. She didn't know Kaylee was recording. She was on the phone with someone, maybe her cousin, maybe her mom. I don't know. But her words burned into me like fire. I don't even know if I love him. I just wanted someone who wouldn't leave, who would hold on no matter how awful I was. She wasn't talking about Nico. She was talking about me. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't redemption. But it was the truth. And sometimes, the truth is worse than the lie. After Kaylee sent me that final folder, I sat in silence for a long time. No music. No phone. No distractions. Just me, an old blanket from my brother's couch, and the quiet kind of pain that doesn't yell anymore, the kind that whispers. I played that voice memo again. The one where she said she wanted someone who wouldn't leave, no matter how awful she was. And somehow, that was the moment I felt lighter. Because I finally understood, it was never about me not being enough. It was about her never knowing what enough looked like. She didn't need love. She needed control. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a placeholder. And I, somewhere along the way, had stopped being a person to her and became a guarantee. I don't know when it happened. I don't even think she noticed. But when she did finally look up and see me, I was already halfway gone. I didn't reply to her last message. I didn't post a follow-up video. I didn't expose more. I didn't need to. The story had already told itself, loudly, messily, and across the entire internet. She tried to rewrite the narrative. Spin it. Monetize it. Turn it into a phoenix rising moment. But the thing about burning bridges is, you can't walk back across them. Instead, I started over. Slowly. I took a break from everything, social media, work, dating, even therapy at first. I started hiking with Marvin every morning, watching sunrises from a cliff trail I didn't even know existed a month earlier. I signed up for a pottery class, of all things. At first, I hated it. Couldn't sinter the clay to save my life. But after the 3rd week, my instructor, this retired nurse named Jolene, looked at me and said, "You're gripping it too hard. You're trying to control it. Let the spin do the work." That stuck with me. Let the spin do the work. I stopped trying to make sense of everything. I stopped replaying her words, the videos, the wedding disaster. I stopped needing an ending that made me feel better. Instead, I just let go. Not in a dramatic, Instagrammable kind of way. Quietly. Naturally. Like an old pain finally fading from a healed scar. Last week, I deleted her contact. Not out of anger, but because I genuinely forgot why I still had it. I won't say I'm better now, or that I've found some magical happily ever after. Life isn't a rom-com, but I'm peaceful. And after everything, that's more than enough. So to anyone watching this who's been lied to, used, humiliated, or broken, I get it. I really do. And I hope you get to a day like this too, where the weight isn't gone, but it's manageable. Where you wake up and realize you're no longer holding the story that hurt you. You're holding the pen again. You're writing the next chapter. And this time, it's yours. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess. I know it was long, but if something in this story hit home, let me know in the comments. Was there a moment that shocked you the most? Or maybe something that reminded you of your own story? I'll be reading every single one of them. And don't forget, this is Reddit Confessions, where the mess gets real and the healing begins. If you've got a story of your own, we're ready to listen.